I'm back from extinction with a brand new deck, but I may have made a little oops. Hello my resparked Planeswalkers, and welcome back to the Signature Spell Bomb. In this episode of the Oath Breakdown, I'm going to be breaking down a Huatli Warrior Poet deck for under $25. In this series, I craft budget Oathbreaker decks designed to introduce new players to the format. In this video, I will take the time to explain how the deck works and how it was designed. This deck is a fun variant on the Oops All Creatures deck archetype. Our Planeswalker today is Huatli Warrior Poet. For 3, a red and a white mana, she's a legendary Planeswalker with 3 loyalty. If we +2 Huatli, we can gain life equal to the greatest power amongst creatures we control. If we 0 her, we get to put a 3/3 dinosaur creature token with trample onto the battlefield. And if we -X her, we can do X damage divided any way we choose amongst any number of target creatures. Creatures dealt damage this way can't block. Her first ability is great for gaining us some life and keeping us in the game. Her second ability is great for just giving us some incidental blockers and attackers, which is what our Dino Poet wants to do. And her minus ability not only allows us to trigger Enrage on our dinos and combos well with our signature spell, but also keeps down blockers. Our signature spell this time is Arc Bond. For 2 and a red, it's an instant. We choose target creature. Whenever that creature is dealt damage this turn, it deals that much damage to each other creature and each other player. Arc Bond is a great signature spell for this deck because it will allow us to trigger Enrage multiple times a turn, and with cards like Brash Taunter can maybe give us an in into a combo that ends the game. So that's the command zone. What's our game plan? In this deck, we want to flood the board with dinos and other creatures, and when we can't always be attacking, then we definitely want to be enraging our creatures and getting the value they produce. And you may be asking yourself, how do we win? Well, like I said in the previous section, we just want some aggro. Some delicious aggro. This is a fun deck, but it doesn't do well against decks that are running anti-creature strategies, so I'm going to give it a power level of 6. Starting off, we've got all of the creatures that are going to help us ramp up since we have an expensive Planeswalker in Dinosaur Rock. Our first couple cards in this section all reduce the cost of dinosaurs we cast. In this section, we have Kinjali's Caller, Opek Huntmaster, who can also be tapped to give a dinosaur haste till the end of turn, and Marauding Raptor, which makes all of our creature spells cheaper to cast, and whenever another creature enters the battlefield, we can choose to have the Raptor deal 2 damage to it. If a dinosaur is dealt this way, the Raptor gets +2/+0 till end of turn. Next up in this section, we have some cards that will help get us some lands directly onto the battlefield. We have Burnished Heart. For 3 colorless mana, we can pay 3 once it's in play to sack it to get 2 lands and put them onto the battlefield tapped. We have Solemn Simulacrum that lets us put a land into play tapped when it comes into play and draws us a card when it leaves. Knight of the White Orchard, which lets us put a plains directly into play from our deck if an opponent controls more lands than us. Walking Atlas, which can be tapped to allow us to put a land from our hand directly into play. And finally, Alpine Guide. For 2 and a red, when he enters the battlefield, we search our library for a mount card, put into play tapped, cast attack each turn if able, and when he dies, we have to sacrifice him. Now, we need some small creatures to get us going at the beginning of the game, so let's look at some of those in Tiny Bodies. First off, we have Imperial Lancer. For 1 white, it's a 1/1, and it has double strike as long as we control Dinosaur. Next up, for 1 white mana, we have Snubhorn Sentry, which is a 0/3, until we have 10 permanents, and then it turns into a 3/3. Relentless Raptor, for a red and a white, is a 3/3 with Vigilance that has to attack and block each combat if able. And finally in this section, we have Sky Terror. For a red and a white, it's a 2/2 flying creature with Menace, which is a great little evasive body that if we can pump, we should. Now, every deck wants to find specific cards in order to win, or if nothing else, at least draw. So let's look at that in Valuable Fossils. First up, we have Priest of the Waking Sun. For 1 white mana, we get a 1/1 At the beginning of our upkeep, we may reveal a dinosaur card from our hand, and if we do, we gain 2 life. And if we pay 3 and 2 white, we can sacrifice it to search our library for a dinosaur hand, reveal it, and put it into our hand. Next up, we have Forerunner of the Empire. For 3 and a red, he's a 1/3. When he enters the battlefield, we may search our library for a dinosaur card, reveal it, shuffle our library, and put that card on top. Then whenever a dinosaur enters the battlefield under our control, we may have him do 1 damage to that creature, to each creature, which is excellent for our Enrage. Next, we have Farside Adept. For 2 and a white, when it enters the battlefield, me and target opponent each get to draw a card. Bone Mat Courier for 1 colorless is a 1/1 with haste. Whenever it attacks, we exile the top card of our library face down with it. At any time, we can pay 1 red, discard our hand, and sacrifice a courier to draw all those cards that have been exiled with it. Next, we have Filigree Familiar. When it enters the battlefield, we gain 2 life, and when it leaves the battlefield, we draw that card. And finally, in this section, we have Humble Defector. If we tap it, we can draw 2 cards, but then we have to give it to another player. This is actually pretty great because we can use this to make some political deals and kind of pass it around the table as needed. Now, I've mentioned it before, but sometimes the best way to get even is to get angry, so let's look at those enraged dinos. First up, we have Raptor Hatchling for 1 and a red. Whenever it's dealt a damage, we get to put a 3/3 dinosaur creature token into play. A lot of times this will kill the hatchling, but not always, and I'll get into that in a second. Frilled Death Spitter for 2 and a red is an enraged dino that whenever it's dealt damage, it will deal 2 damage to target opponent, which makes it a little bit of a damage engine for us, and gets us around some blockers. Needletooth Raptor for 3 and a red. When it's dealt damage, it deals 5 damage to target creature an opponent controls, which makes it one of the best removal outlets in our deck. Imperial Ceratops for 4 and a white. Whenever it is dealt damage, we gain 2 life, which will help keep us in the game. And Bellowing Aegisaur for 5 and a white. Whenever it is dealt 1 damage, we get to put a 1/1 counter on each other creature we control. This is how we can hit our little raptor baby and still get 3/3s out of it without killing it. Finally, in this section, we have Sun Crown Hunters. Whenever they're dealt damage, we can deal 3 damage to target opponent. Again, that's just a good way to get around blockers. Now, there are some cards we're playing to protect our plans, so let's see what they are in Defensive Dinos. First up, we have Temple Allosaur. If a source would deal damage to another dinosaur we control, we prevent all but 1 of that damage. This will save our dinos in most cases from damage-based board wipes or other damage, but also make sure we still get those tasty enrage triggers. Kinjali Sunwing says that our opponent's creatures enter the battlefield tapped. Angelic Protector. When it enters the battlefield, target creature we control gains indestructible till the end of turn. Evra, Halcyon Witness, costs 4 and 2 white. She has lifelink, and if we pay 4, we can exchange our life total with her. So a good way to play her is to pay the 4, have her power become 20 and her defense 4, then we up Huatli using her first ability, and gain back that 20 life. And then we swing in, and we can wash and repeat this process as she does damage or does whatever she needs to in order to really milk life out of the game. In this last section, we have some incidental things our deck loves to do in all the rest. Goring Ceratops for 5 and 2 white is a dinosaur with double strike, but whenever it attacks, all of our other creatures will gain double strike. Brash Taunter for 4 and a red is indestructible. Whenever it is dealt damage, it deals that much damage to target opponent. We tap 2 and a red and tap it, it will fight with another creature. Blocking with Brash Taunter or doing anything with it at all that will cause it to take damage is excellent for us being able to target down opponents' life totals. Bloodfire Dwarf for red is a 1/1 creature that if we pay 1 red mana and sacrifice it, it will deal 1 damage to each creature without flying. Again, really good as a mini board wipe, but also for our enrage triggers. Banisher Priest. When enters the battlefield, we exile target creature and opponent controls, and it stays that way until the priest leaves the battlefield. Plan our guide for 3 and a white. If we exile it, we exile all creatures, and at the beginning of the next end step, we return those cards to the battlefield under their owner's control. And finally, Leonin Relic Warden is a 2/2 cat that when it enters the battlefield we can exile an artifact or enchantment until it leaves play. Finally, now that we've gone through all the cards in the deck, let's look at the cards that make it run in the mana base. This deck, we're running 4 lands that can tap for white or red in order to help smooth out our draws and our deck play. We're also running 2 lands to help thin our decks with Evolving Wild and Terramorphic Expanse, 9 plains, and 9 mountains. Now that we're done with the lands, let's do a quick price check. Since the Oathbreaker at the time of this recording is over $5, they will not be included in the cost, but this deck will include the cost of shipping, but it will not include the cost of basic lands. The cost of this deck was the best available price on TCG Player at the time of recording. Deck cost this time is $20.86. This deck was built on a budget, but if you have the extra available funds, here's some upgrades you may want to consider. We suggest adding a Waking Sun's Avatar. It's a great card for having a dinosaur-based board wipe. Huatli, the Primer Storm, is a great addition. It's an additional set of card draw that will help you close out the game and steal from your opponents. Stuffy Doll is just a second Brash Taunter that can help you win the game. Trapjaw Giant is another valuable enraged creature that has excellent removal stapled on it. And so does Silver-Clad Ferostodons. So thank you for tuning in to see my resurrection from extinction. If you like the deck or any of the cards in it, or just want to make some suggestions as to what you think I could do better, please let me know about that in the comments below. If you want to support the channel, you can do so by using any of our links in the description below. We have links for many vendors that help support the channel simply by shopping for the cards you want for your decks and the playmats you want to play on. Want more deck tech content today, you can check out the deck tech I'm going to put here on the end card. Also here on the end card, I'm listing my Patreons. I owe them a huge debt of gratitude for helping to support the channel. If you want to be listed among my patrons, please suggest checking the link out in the description. Thanks again for joining me today. I want you to know I can't do this without you guys, and I wouldn't. Have a great day.